you can ask some of the shorter questions using that. Now, Ali, let me bring you to the forefront as well. Let's see, to make this participant the presenter. Okay, so could you tell us a little bit about who is Ali Halabi? What is his story? You know, where were you born? What's your family like?
Sure. So thank you so much for having me again. It's always a pleasure to come to your classes, and I missed you. I hope the next one will be face-to-face and not over web, because I'm tired of these videos and video calls. So let me start very quickly. Biraz Türkçe konuşabilirim ama İngilizce devam edeceğim. Because I guess the class is in English, right?
Yes, it is.
Perfect. So I was born in Lebanon, in Beirut. You probably know Beirut by now because of the major explosion that we had back in August, after which I cried for 10 days. So yeah, that's Beirut. That's where I spent most of my life. I came here in 2012, so I'm 36 years old. I was born in 1984, came here in 2012 with Procter & Gamble. So I was working in Procter & Gamble. You guys probably know P&G. It's a great company. I've had an amazing career in it. My last assignment was, I was here as an expat in Turkey, and then I hated Istanbul's traffic problem. Those who are from Istanbul or have been to Istanbul would know that Istanbul is pretty nasty when it comes to traffic. But I think it's the most beautiful city in the world. I really do. I'm someone who's spent considerable amount of time in London, in Paris, in New York, Dubai, you name it. I think Istanbul is the most beautiful city in the world, but it does have that traffic problem that needs a solution. And I've decided to dedicate the rest of my career. I was 29 years old at the time when I quit Procter & Gamble, and decided to dedicate my career and my professional life to mobility and to transportation, because I used to think, I still think that the amount of time you spend doing work is very valuable, and you might as well put it to something that will help the planet. So I decided to focus on mobility, given that mobility was both a source of pollution, but also a source of stress and unhappiness for a lot of people living in Istanbul. I mean, it is the most agreeable problems the city has, which is traffic. And yeah, that's how my journey started. I quit end of 2013 from Procter & Gamble, launched Volt, my first startup, in 2014. Long story short, in 2017, Volt failed. We'll get back to that later in more detail. But now...
Let me interrupt there and ask a question. What was your background, your education in? What did you study?
I studied marketing strategy and business management, business development. Basically, that's what I studied. So I was not technical, but this is something that you learn along the way. Like, I picked up product management, and I became, according to the words of my teammates, my colleagues, they call me a technical founder, though I don't think I'm a technical founder, but they consider me a technical founder, which is good. So I do understand, the potential of technology and its limitations. Usually the line that separates technical and non-technical people in the world of entrepreneurship is whether you understand the potential of technology, its capabilities, but also its limitations. So yeah, I studied marketing. Career-wise, if we want to run through it very quickly, I hit the marketplace in I think it was June of 2006. This is when I joined the market, the workforce, the proper workforce. I worked for 2 years as a product manager in a Dutch startup. So I was doing most of the product work. And then that startup went bust. It failed. That's what startups usually do most of the time. So you guys need to know that. You probably know it already. But after that startup experience, I wanted to have a corporate experience, basically. So I had my corporate experience, but then the startup itch was already under my skin. So I had to go back to the startup world and jump back at it. So at 29, 2013, end of 2013, I jumped the bandwagon from corporate to startups. 2014 to 2017 had my first startup. My first startup as a founder, but actually it's my second startup as an experience.
Your experience with P&G is also interesting for us because typically a graduate of Middle East Technical, the first jobs that they have usually are either in finance, accounting, or the multinationals. And P&G is one of the companies that many people say, oh, that is like the dream jobs.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think, okay, once you get in there, okay, then you're corporate for life. But that's not necessarily true. A lot of our graduates that have gone into even the multinationals, some of them tend to stay in there, but many of them, after 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years, they tend to maybe do a little traveling or go out into the world and switch companies or do startup work. So did you have a lot of people at P&G? Did they question what you were doing, or did they say, that's normal?
Of course it was questioned. By the way, it's not easy, right? Like making the jump is definitely not easy. Because the thing about P&G and I would say any multinational or a big corporate, once you get in and you have a good career path, is that it sucks you in, right? The pay is great, and this touches base on your first question, about my background and where I come from. So my parents are not educated, right? My dad was a taxi driver. We come as a family from poverty, right? So for a poor family, the destination is a good job with a good salary, right? And that's quite a sensitive topic, not fully understood by different people from different social classes. But for me, I came from poverty, right? So through my teenage years, I was extremely poor. Couldn't go to the cinema, right? Like I didn't have, I had one shoes for 2 years, right, until it flaps up open. Now I have 10 shoes, for example, right? So I'm rich now, but
and a unicycle collection
and 4 unicycles. You saw them, yeah?
Yes.
So I mean, it was quite intense, right? And I really owe it to my parents and my mom and dad for really fighting and having that vision that education, it's all about education. It's all about crossing that finish line, because somehow you make it in life afterwards. But actually, they I mean, despite all of their sacrifices, and I'm forever grateful, of course, but their view also is different, right? For their view is P&G is the destination, or not to name a specific company, but the corporate world is a destination because of the the security, the safety, the stability. Which is quite interesting, and I used to believe in it. Like when I first joined P&G, I thought I would never leave, and I have a lot of friends in there that would never leave. But a few kind of like philosophical questions. I don't know. This might derail the conversation a bit, but a few philosophical questions start kicking in, because when you're making a good salary, after a while, I mean. Okay, so you buy, everything you wanted to buy, etc. Of course, you can always spend more, but I'm not super lavish in my lifestyle or in my spending, right? So after a point, the money you make becomes like, I mean, if it's 50% more, it doesn't really make a difference. Like it stops being the motivation, right? you start, just like the Maslow pyramid of needs, you start wanting a higher purpose. You start wanting a bigger source of motivation, right? And for me, it was I wanted to be doing something that really solves real-world problems, right? Not that what PNG does isn't doing that. Of course, it's doing that. But for me, I wanted to be part of the technology revolution. There's obviously a revolution happening right now, and I felt like I'm out of it. This digital transformation that's touching literally everything, where software is eating the world, how Uber was disrupting the world, how Amazon disrupted everything, how Netflix disrupted everything, how Spotify changed everything. Like, when you look at these things, it's like really interesting times to be living in, right? And I wanted to be part of that. I didn't want to be part of, the good old multinationals. So both my parents, but also my boss in PNG was like, "Are you crazy? You don't even speak Turkish. You're 1 year in the country. How are you gonna fundraise and build a team and find customers and all of that?" And he was right. I mean, it's tough, but I knew that this is a direction. Like, I knew this will set me back, and it did, versus my peers. But now, 7 years in, because I made the jump end of 2013. So 7 years in, I think I'm in a better place than most of my peers, right? Mm-hmm. But 4 years in, I was in a much worse place than most of my peers. So, there's this, my corporate peers are continuously going up, right? Steadily, but kind of like in a linear way. But entrepreneurship, I would draw it as, you would go almost flat for a while, and then you have these wobbles. You would think, "Oh, wow, I'm taking off," but then you get destroyed again. And then, "Oh, I'm taking off," and then you get destroyed again. And then it happens like too many times before you find your break. And when you get your break, it's exponential, right? So it is, you need a strong stomach to be able to take all of that. It is intense. It's not as simple or easy, but it's very rewarding. I mean, if you like intense, this is for you.
Where did the risk taking? Do you consider yourself to be a risk taker?
No, for sure.
Where did that come from?
Where did it come from? I mean, how is what I'm doing risk taking, or where did the risk taking love come from?
Well, I don't know. Like typical Turkish families, your family also, wants you to have a respectable job, a nice steady income, and then some people aren't satisfied with that. They feel that need to go outside and try something new. And so, for example, other people in your family, were there a lot of entrepreneurs? Was it forced entrepreneurship, or did you have role models growing up that did stuff like this?
Yeah, so that's a great question, actually, because I mean, my dad being, the taxi driver he used to be, and then the truck driver he used to be, and now a restaurant owner and operator, my dad is well off now, by the way, right? Like, so he's a natural entrepreneur in that sense, right? But he was always looking at it during his struggle years as, if you work in the bank, it'll be better, right? But now that he made his breakthrough in his restaurant, he's like, now he gets entrepreneurship better. He made his breakthrough in his 50s, right? So it took him a while. But, there was that. I mean, it really got philosophical when I was 29. So that's 7 years ago, right? When I was quitting PNG or making a decision to quit. Because here I have it. I'm living the expat life in Istanbul. Driving a brand new car, all of that, like it's all fancy and nice. But from the other side, you want to do something more meaningful, and potentially it will make you more money in the long run if you succeed, or it'll make you zero if you fail, but you will have more know-how and you will try again. So that was the mentality. So there was a lot of kind of like things that I looked at, and one of them was an interesting. It was super interesting, by the way. An article I read somewhere. It says that if Christopher Columbus, on the day he discovered America, right? If he started earning $5,000 every day, and every day ever since he discovered America till today, so that's 1492 till today, $5,000. Today he wouldn't be the richest man in the world, right? Jeff Bezos would be. And I did the math. I ran the math, and it's true.
Is this after the divorce, though? It's been cut into two.
Yeah, it got cut into two, but I'm really not worried about that. Right? I think it's just going to be fine, right? But yeah, this was pre-divorce, I guess. But I mean, it's insane, right? It shows you that. And by the way, again, I'm coming from poverty, so I have this insane motivation of becoming rich, right? For me, it's not, I want to become rich. It's a very clear objective. I want to make a lot of money. And for those who think, money doesn't buy happiness, I think they don't know where to shop, right? You can buy happiness, right? You can do whatever you want with money. For me, happiness is a ride on my unicycle. For me, happiness is donating to NGOs that are helping a cause that I care about. For me, happiness is flying my mom, taking her out on a vacation. So money does buy happiness, obviously with health. So you need your health and you need to take care of yourself. But yeah, so for me, I come from that motivation because I've seen poverty and it's not nice. It's not recommended. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. So for that reason, I really look at it from the fact that, the world works in a very simple way. The economical system. You're either on the side of capital or you're either on the side of labor, right? And that logic is very simple. If you have $10 million, let me say it this way. If you're on the capital side, if you have $10 million, for this $10 million to become $11 million, it's inevitable. It will just happen, right? You simply diversify it here and there, etc. It will become $11 million, and it will grow, and so the rich will get richer. That's how the system works. And if you're making $100 per day, which means you're making $2,100 per month, for you to make $2,500, you need to work 4 extra days, right? It's, again, that simple. And the minute you start, breaking your dependency on your limited time, which everyone has the same time, by the way. Everyone comes with 24 hours a day. The only way is to go on the capital side. And going on the capital side is either investing early on in your 20s, or founding a company, or joining a startup that gives equity, right? These are simply the only ways to make the switch from labor to capital. Because if you, the other day I was having a conversation with a friend, without naming him now, or naming his company or whatever, but he was saying, I'm sick of my company, I want to quit. I was like, how much are you making? And he told me he's making 10,000 euros a month, right? Here in Istanbul, by the way. It's a global company. He's making 10,000 euros a month. And this is one of the top highest salaries you can earn in Istanbul, I guess.
And his company probably also pays for his house and gives him a car.
Yes, he's the heavyweight expat basically, but Turkish expat in the city basically. So an insane amount of money, right? 10,000 euros, which is I think $12,000 a month, which is insane.
Don't convert to TL.
Yeah, so don't convert it to TL, right? So, but then I understood his frustration. I totally get it, because he was like, we were at this entrepreneurship event, right? So we were there, and everyone was an entrepreneur except him. He's the GM of that company, right? And he's like, I'm sick of it. I'm frustrated. He's 40, so he want to make the jump. He's trying to secure his 50s, right? And he's saying, you know what? Okay, I said, it's crazy, man. It's a great job. Why would you want to walk away from it? And he was like, look around, everyone is worth more than $1 million right here, right? Like, including myself, right? Like our net worth as entrepreneurs, given our companies, is more than $1 million at least for everyone that was there. He's like, I'm not, right? In that perspective, he's like, and I will never see $1 million. And then we ran the math. We're like, okay, so he's making $12,000. He's like, I'm renting the best house in Göktürk, right? So, that's $2,000. I'm gonna live lavishly and I'm gonna travel, I'm gonna eat out every day, etc. I'm gonna spend $5,000. I'll save $5,000 every month, right? Great. So in a year, he's saving $60,000, if the math is correct right now, $60,000. He's like, assume I'm gonna stay in that company for the next 10 years. Nothing changes. Like, everything is super stable, which is never the case.
Still 600,000.
So he's like, by the time I'm 50, yeah, 600,000. And what do I do with this 600,000? Like, in my 20s, I used to think, oh wow, $600,000 is a lot of money, but no, it's not, because what can you do with them? You buy a few apartments, they make you rent, but I mean, what else? You start worrying about them growing in value, right? Or losing value. So these kind of like seem like first world problems right now, but I mean, they really, I wish I was told these in my 20s. And that's why I love when you invite me or others invite me. I really wish I had someone in my 20s when I was in college to come and tell me like how they think about money very openly, like talk about it, right? Because when you think about that, entrepreneurship becomes an investment more than anything else. I think it's an investment. If you want to make quick money right now, over the next 2-3 years, entrepreneurship is not for you. I mean, it could be because you might do something and might blow up and become huge, but 99% chance it's going to fail, right? And you should be okay with that, because you need to take that as the kind of like opportunity to learn. And because trust me, you don't know anything, right? Like, I wish I was told that clearly enough, because even at 29, I came out of P&G thinking, I've worked 2 years in a Dutch startup. I worked 6 years in P&G. I know a lot of shit, right? And that's the thing. The more you learn about the business world and about how startups work and about how to properly read a P&L or how to properly manage a P&L, the more you realize you don't know anything. Today, I learn a new thing every single day, and I'm 36 and I'm actively, doing multiple things, right? So
one word of warning, though. One word of warning not to Ali, but to the rest of the class. Yes, everyone around that table maybe was worth more than 1 million, except the guy earning 10,000 euros a month. But not all entrepreneurs were sitting around that table. For the 5 or 10 people around that table, there were probably 500 outside just trying to make ends meet. So yeah. Yes, if it goes well, it's a great story, but be careful, because the stories that you hear, usually if this is a normal curve, a bell curve, we usually hear about the stories either at one extreme or the other extreme. Yeah. Either those that fail magnificently or that, become very successful.
By the way, sorry for interrupting, but on that point specifically, these people, including myself, that are worth more than $1 million around the table, it's on paper. I mean, we don't have $1 million in the bank, right? But the company's valuation and the shares that we hold in that company, which is all fictitious, by the way, until it's actually bought up by someone, right? But all of these are on paper, and it could go down to zero, right? So your $1 million worth could be wiped down to zero if your company fundamentally loses, or something like COVID happens that completely throws you out of balance, right? So these are the
or a new law comes out that says the service industry is going to be outlawed. Everything's going to be done by the government from now on.
And very possible things. So all of these are it takes me to like a key point that the other day I was having with my girlfriend about, you know, because I mean, she also started a business two years ago. Now it's going well, but she's being stressed about it. You know, it's tough. You know, people don't do things right. She has to follow up, blah blah blah, all of that. And you know, we spoke about, again, another thing here off topic, but you know, there's destination, right? Like there's no place to go to, right? Because really, the more you think about it, if you're not enjoying your day-to-day work, there's literally, you're not going anywhere. Because think about it, for Volt lines, right? And I've discovered that, by the way, with a discussion with an entrepreneur who sold his company in Istanbul. He sold his company for $33 million, and I thought he would be very happy, right? Like it's a very good, you know, it's a very good deal. But when I met him, he was like super unhappy, and I was like, you know, how come, dude? $33 million, isn't that the destination? He's like, when you have $33 million, you start worrying about them, right? It's a big responsibility. You know, am I gonna lose this wealth, or am I gonna grow it? And then when he looks at his company that he sold, 2 years later we met, it was worth $100 million, right? So it's like shit, you know, like I swapped, you know, something that was for $100 million for $33 million. And now my $33 million are 31 because, you know, he made a few investments that went belly up, and, you know, he put some property and the dollar went down, etc. Right? So, and then I realized there's really no destination, you know, like, are you enjoying the journey? And you have to enjoy the journey. So there's no destination. Even the fact that, you know, even at a certain point when, you know, the company is worth something could happen that can destroy it. So you might as well just enjoy every day as it goes, and take it as an opportunity to learn, basically. Really.
Ali, just tell us about your initial company, Volt, because that's when I had met you, and you loved that company and the story, and it was going to be great. Tell us what happened.
And then it went bust. It wasn't great at all. So basically, I mean, Volt was, and by the way, you said it's you said a pivot, right? We usually don't call it a pivot because that company failed and we shut it down, and we opened a new company. Now the common mistake in the market is that, you know, Volt and Volt lines are probably the same company. No, I was just too lazy. You know, we were tired in the office, and I told the designer, just, you know, change the car, make it a bus, throw lines there. Let's just keep the word Volt, and yani iş yarım saat halloldu yani. So that's how we did it. But there are two different companies. They have nothing to do, and the first company failed miserably. So I wish I came up with a new name, but, you know, that's a great.
And you had gotten investments, and you had
$1.2 million. We got $1.2 million, and it just, I mean, it went to çöpe gitti. And we told the investors, geçmiş olsun arkadaşlar, yani olmadı. But, you know, they invested in the new company, most of them. So that's nice, I guess.
All of them? You didn't lose any?
I mean, the biggest ones, they invested in the new company. The other ones that didn't invest, they just didn't have the, you know, appetite to invest anymore. But I mean, MEVP, WAMDA, you know, some Turkish investors as well reinvested in the new company. But you know, MEVP was the biggest one. They lost $600,000, right? In Volt. But Volt, basically what it was, I mean, I was stuck in traffic. And, you know, I was stuck in traffic to a point where it's physically not possible in Lebanon, right? Because Lebanon is just too small. I mean, you can't be stuck for 5 hours in traffic in Lebanon. You know, if you drive 1 hour and a half to the east, you're in Syria. 1 hour and a half to the north, you're in Syria. 1 hour and a half to the south, you're in Israel, right? So you can't just, I mean, it's not possible to get stuck 5 hours in traffic. And I got stuck in traffic here for 5 hours, right? Like, I couldn't go to the toilet. So it was insane, and it made me almost hate Istanbul, but I was like, no, I love Istanbul. So the problem is the traffic. So I started kind of like looking at traffic from, like a problem solving approach, right? Like, what is traffic? What is it made of? Why does it happen? And my discovery was not a discovery. I call it like I've discovered dual gas, but what I saw was that it's a data problem, right? Traffic is made up of empty seats, and empty seats happen because there's no data that assigns each seat to a certain destination, right? It's a lost capacity basically. And when I did the math, 85% of the seats in traffic are empty in Binek Araç, in the normal cars, which was an insane metric. I was like, okay, we need to do something about that. And that's what we started to do. So what Volt was, it was an on-demand carpooling app, which probably a lot of people after me had the same idea and tried to do the same thing, and they failed in it, etc. And they will continue to fail because tried it as well 2 years. Like, they tried it 1 year after we launched, right? So in 2015, Google tried it, and because Google was trying it in San Francisco, we started getting more funding because the world was about to witness something. But it didn't happen in San Francisco. It didn't happen here. It didn't happen in Paris. It didn't happen anywhere because on-demand carpooling is very difficult. Like, it's a C2C model. So you don't control the marketplace. You don't control any side. You don't control the quality. So it's C2C and on-demand, geo-based. So, it needs an insane amount of liquidity in the market. You need to get to a critical mass that's almost impossible, meaning that when you open the app and look for a ride, you need to find a driver around you right now going in the same direction at the same time. We tried scheduling, we tried doing some data science work, some algorithms, it just doesn't work. And Google failed in it, right? Google tried it in something called Waze Carpool. So they bought an Israeli company for $1.2 billion called Waze. It's a navigation app, gamified navigation app. And they've integrated Waze Carpool in it, and they created a Waze Carpool mobile app that didn't work. So the long story here is, I can take you through it, but the short story is there was no product market fit. It just didn't. The market didn't need such a thing, or it needed, but that was not the solution, right? And yeah, in 2017, we tried everything. We tried fundraising. We ran out of cash. Usually, that's how you die. You run out of cash.
And you were actually burning money. I remember, because you were. They were basically like an electronic thumb, right? So I need a ride from here to here. And if there's somebody driving around you, it matches you up. But to be able to have people around, you were paying people just to register. I'm here, I'm going here. And if they did this, 3 times a week, you would give them how much money?
I forgot the numbers, but yeah, I mean, you could technically, if you're using it properly, you could drive your car for free. And not worry about parking, etc., because people going in the same direction at the same time would be paying for it, and these people would be paying something that's 70% cheaper than a taxi. So it just made a lot of sense, right? I mean, think about it. We saw it in Otto next to
the
Mekame. What?
Kakame.
Yeah. Yes. There's always auto
ride.
Yeah, exactly. So there I was like, okay, it does happen inside campuses, and we operated inside O2 back then, and it didn't work. So there's just simply no product market fit. And there's a question from Dawn where you should draw the line between keep struggling with issues and admitting, okay, the startup is failed, and what to do to avoiding from that failure's disadvantage. That's a great question. I mean, I'm gonna get to the questions, but that kind of like caught my attention. So thank you, Dawn, for asking. The thing that's I mean, it's very, very difficult to answer, right? Like, I really didn't know, because it's admitting failure while everyone is they listen to you and they're like, oh wow, yeah, this entrepreneur is onto something, and then you fail. especially after you've taken $1.2 million of investment, right? Like that comes with a huge, weight on your shoulder and a huge responsibility. So when do you stop fighting? When do you keep fighting, right? Because none of the previous fundings were easy. Each one of them, because that $1.2 million came in the form of $50,000, then $25,000, then $200,000, then $100,000, then $600,000. It came in so many batches. Each one of them, was we're gonna fail and then we got it. We're gonna fail and then we got it, right? So we were barely making it. But when I decided to pull off the plug was, first of all, I told myself I'm gonna give it a try for 3 years, right? That was one thing when we launched in February of 2014. I was like, by 2017, mid-year 2017, if we're not taking off, I mean, this has to stop, right? So I put a time limit, right? That's very arbitrary. There's no science behind it. Don't take me for it, right? But it was just my way. The second thing is, I put certain components, or say certain not components. How would you say it?
Targets.
Hypothesis. You assume that if you do this would work, right? So after doing these and seeing that it didn't work, or the results are not coming in, then you become scientific at that point, because you've assumed something, you've done something about it, you've measured, your assumption was wrong, right? So you get to a point where we ask ourselves, did we try everything? Because we tried scheduling, and then we tried on demand, and then we built a navigation app, guys. We built a Yandex Google Maps competitor. It was pretty accurate. We did it with Here Maps, and we've done everything. Like, I knew that we've done everything, and it didn't work. So this is where we pulled off the plug. But so that takes me to 2017, right?
Yes, the pivot, which is not a pivot but a failure and relaunch.
The swing year. I mean, swing year. It's an intense year. So it's a year where my marriage fell apart. It's a year where I failed my startup. It was an intense year because like from one side, understandably so, your wife is just supporting you at that point, and the dynamic goes off balance a bit. This is çok samimi bir muhabbet oldu. So from one side you have that. From the other side, that you're this is your passion, this is what you want to do, that you're going to crack something in it, and you have a new idea. But your investors are sick of you having new ideas. Your wife is sick of you having new ideas. Everyone's like, of course, Ali, you have a new idea. Of course, right? But I'm like, no, this one's going to work. And people are like, of course it's going to work, right? But, I mean, I had to do it, right? So I did it anyway. And, I told investors, guys, I need $500,000 to launch this new idea. And they were like, fuck off. And one investor told me, I'm not your uncle. Ben senin amcam değilim, dedi. Literally. I was like, okay, amcam. And I was like, okay, sure, guys, I understand. I totally get it. And plus, you would start hearing terms like, the cap table is tired. Meaning that, there's too many people on the cap table. The founder now is a minority. And now you're having a new idea. Bitti yani. So we shut down the company. And I was like, okay, guys, if you're not going to help me, I'm going to start a new company. And you're more than welcome to join the new company. I'm going to give you 30 cents on the dollar of everything you invested. I'm just going to give it to you as a gesture. But I'm not going to put you on the cap table. I'm going to keep it under my name, right? So that was my way of getting them in. I'm like, if you invest, I'll transfer you these shares. If not, I'll keep them under my name. One day when I make an exit, I'll pay you back. So it was a deal that they couldn't refuse, because from one side they're writing off their investment, from the other side they're getting this, sweet deal in a new company that could work. And most of them said, we cannot support you in the beginning. You have to prove it. You have to prove that it'll work. And once you do, we will come and back you up. I was like, okay, fair enough. So
where did the idea come from? Where did you run into this? This can work.
Yes. So basically, so Volt was struggling. Volt is C2C. So I went to some CEOs that I know. While fundraising, I met a lot of CEOs. So I went to them. I was like, "Hey guys, do you want corporate carpooling?" I was trying to sell them shit they didn't know, basically, or shit they didn't need, basically. I mean, we don't need corporate carpooling. What are you talking about? I'm like, it's a great idea for your employees to share rides together. I'm like, nah. So that didn't fly.
The company's paying for their gas anyways. Why would they need it?
Yeah, exactly. I was just trying to bring life to a dead animal, basically. So that's what happened. But and then I was like, you know what? What's your biggest mobility problem, guys? That was the random question I cracked. And literally, I think something like 4 out of 5 CEOs said the same thing. They said personal services, we fucking hate it. Right? Sorry for the profanity, by the way. This is a class. I'm not supposed to be very profane, but they said we hate it. And I was like, why do you hate personal services? Because I hate it too, right? It's just, it crowds the streets. They park on the side of the road.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I hate it too. And they're like, it's very inefficient. It's very expensive. It's $1,000 per bus, right? To rent per month. And we cannot fill up the buses. They're half empty. I'm like, why can't you fill up the buses? And for, like those who are from Istanbul, they would understand the example. Like, you cannot put Beykoz employees with Sarıyer employees if you're leaving from Levant, right? You have to split the route. Otherwise, the route becomes too long. I was like, okay. And then, coming from the sharing economy, I asked, why don't you share buses with other companies in the same area? I mean, they also have employees going the same. I mean, that's the immediate way to optimize it. They're like, yeah, it's a great idea. We just don't want to have our HR deal with their HR, our idari işler deal with their idari işler, our insan kaynakları deal with their insan kaynakları. It's just, and it's too offline. And, when they said...
And it makes the company look cheap.
And it makes the company look cheap, etc. I mean, it's just, it didn't... I'm like, okay, so what if there's a system, a digital system, where it's a big network, and instead of renting buses, you buy a subscription per employee. So think of it like Netflix. Instead of renting DVDs, you would buy a subscription, and with that subscription, you access the whole network, and this way lines become more express, faster, etc., etc. And they're like, yeah, of course, that will work. So the idea came from them, basically, right? Like, or the problem definition came from the customer, and I think this is the best way. Now I don't care about being the smart guy who came up with the idea. No, I didn't come up with the idea of Volt lines, right? I really don't care. The idea came from me asking the question of what is your biggest mobility problem, and listening to the customer, because what is a startup? I mean, a startup is solving a problem, right? Like, that's the only way. It should solve a problem. It's a temporary organization that solves a problem for a big enough group that is willing to pay for it to become a sustainable business model. That's what it is, right? Like, in very simple English, right? Nothing fancy, right? Is there a problem?
Blank.
Yeah, exactly. Is there a problem? Is there enough people suffering from that problem? Are they willing to pay money to solve that? And then it becomes obvious. So I came back to the investors and I'm like, hey guys, I have an idea. And they're like, okay. And so the story, we went through that. And then I started the new company, started fundraising for it. Obviously, that didn't fly. My team left me, most of it. I mean, there's today one person in Volt Lines that's still from Volt, right? Because everyone gave up, right? And understandably so. So everyone left. But I'm like, guys, this is going to work. This is going to work. By the way, Volt generated 0 revenue, right? Like, today, if any of you guys start selling lemonade under your house, you will make more revenue than Volt did ever in one day. I mean, Volt didn't make money, right? At all. I'm not talking profit, revenue, sales. Just, probably we sold like used tele, right? So just sell Simit and you would be bigger than us. So yeah, we failed. And then I started fundraising for Volt Lines, and the fundraise for Volt Lines was a bit tough, right? Because, I mean, you're a failed entrepreneur. in a culture, to be honest and frank here, doesn't really appreciate failure that much like the US does. But I think we're learning how to learn the value of failure. Because one investor, after 50 rejections, 50 no's, right? I'm dealing with from one side, a collapsing marriage, from the other side, rejections back and forth. One investor, he listened for 50 minutes. He didn't talk at all. He listened. His name is Firat Ishbejar. And for those who don't know Firat is Comensis. He together with his brother Fatih sold Positron for $100 million. One of the most successful internet entrepreneurs in Turkey, right?
And bought it back.
And bought it back. I mean, it's intense, right? I mean, these guys are great. These two brothers are crazy great. Firat, I mean, he's like, I'm pitching him the idea, right? And he's like, I don't have any revenue, no customers, just an idea. But he's like, you know what? I'll invest in this not because of the business, but because of you. I know you failed before. I know you'll avoid the same mistakes. You're going after a more realistic target this time. So he was the first investor. And then Ali Chebi from he was an investor in Volt, also invested in Volt Lines. And then Ömer Erkman invested in Volt Lines in the second month. And then we had our first customer, and then we started billing, and then we started growing. And then within 6 months, we were doing $1 million in revenue, right? So we grew like crazy very quickly. And we've been growing very quickly ever since, right? Until COVID happened, of course. But that's a different topic. We'll get to it in a bit. But yeah, that's the quick story of it.
You also went international, right?
We do have. We didn't go international yet. It is the target. We do have a very important international investor out of Mexico. They're called Deal Ventures. They are the corporate venture capital arm of the biggest public transportation operator in Mexico, Mobility ADO. They love what we do. They think it's the future of corporate mobility. So that's one thing, and potentially they will be customers of our SaaS side, our not service as a service, but our software as a service segment of the business. We do have potential customers in Italy, in Egypt for our software, because basically what our software does is it builds a virtual public transportation network, right? Made up of these buses. Instead of the bus being just a bus that does a line, it becomes, together with other buses, it becomes a network, like a metro network, right? You search from point A to point B, and you can see that you can take this bus from here to here because they have lines, and some of these buses have dynamic lines. So it's an intense network, right? And it keeps growing as more users join it and as more companies join it. That network keeps growing and growing and growing until it becomes super express. So the eventual form of it will be a bus leaves from Maslak with 15 people on it, and it goes express to a residential cité in Çekmeköy, where all of these people live in the same cité and they all live in and work in Maslak. They work in 10 different companies. It doesn't matter. So it's a shared network, but it's express lines. And that's a network that is unbreakable, basically, so yeah.
And plus, you are able to offer changes also, right? Today I'm going home, but tomorrow I want to go to Taxi. With your product, they're able to do that.
They're able to do that. And for example, free of charge, by the way, like there's no extra charge. If you're a subscriber, just like on Netflix, you can binge watch, or you can just be too busy to watch anything, right? But you still pay a subscription. The same model. Also, let's say you work in Maslak, but today you went to see your girlfriend in Ataşehir. You could find a bus leaving from Ataşehir going to your home, right? Or let's say you slept at your parents' place. You can find, and you work in Levant. You can find a bus leaving from close to your parents' place going to Levant. So it's a full dimension network, right? And it's also only B2B. It's only white collar. So we only work with corporates right now. We don't work with individuals. Yeah.
Among the questions in the chat, there's a few that are asking about what's going on with. Would you have? Is it better that you worked in corporate and then did this? Would you do it differently? And what age would you begin? I also have some thoughts on that, but I'd like to get your views first.
Yeah, I mean, honestly speaking, right now we do have fresh graduates working in Vaultlines. So today Vaultlines has 75 people, both the office and the field. In the HQ we have 35 people. We have some fresh graduates, fresh out of college, joining us. It's a great way to learn, to get exposed to a startup, because in a startup you'll always get to do more work. You'll always get to do more. You always get to see other functions. Yeah, I can tell you, in a big corporation, if you're in sales, you only do sales. If you're in marketing, you only see a small fraction of marketing, right? But in a startup, you will understand, the profitability, depending on the startup, by the way. Like if they're open about numbers, you'll get exposed to a lot of things, right? And that's usually a good thing. But I don't want to talk bad or in a negative way about the corporate experience. The corporate experience is also good, right? It helps you understand, the kind of like discipline needed to get work done, because people think, how startups are laid back or chill, or people might be coming with shorts to the office, yes, but that doesn't mean we're laid back, right? It's quite intense. It does have its targets and deadlines and right. So and one thing I see, that fresh graduates that go directly to the startup, they usually, guys, don't get me wrong here, but some of them tend to be schmarek, in the sense that they haven't seen how tough the corporate world is, right? And you're sometimes asking them, it could be a generation gap or generation different expectation, etc. But you get to see things a bit different in how some ex-corporate people who join the startup, they perform better. They end up performing better in the startup, right? So there's no one size fits all, right? But if your objective is to become an entrepreneur in your 30s, then you should not delay it. You should join a startup. That's the short answer. Join a startup and work as if you are the founder. All right. Really try to touch everything. Do more than is asked from you. Ask for more responsibility. Get exposure to other areas in the startup. Because trust me, founders will give you that. In startups, you'll get as much as you want to get, because there's a ton of workload all the time, because of the growth and the speed that things change. So the short answer is definitely go the startup way.
I also agree. I believe working, even if you don't start your own startup, working in a startup, especially during your internships or while at college, can be very beneficial. But the benefit you get from working corporate is, one, you're able to see, if it's a large corporate, you're able to see how a well-oiled machine can work in some cases. In some cases, you see the problems. And there's research which says that the average age for successful entrepreneurship isn't in your 20s. Seldom is it in your 20s.
Yeah.
The typical big idea, big successes usually come late 30s, 40s, sometimes even 50s, after you've gotten to know an industry and seen and found good problems. So at graduation, you basically usually come up with solutions to problems that you're encountering. Oh, where shall we go tonight? Oh, how to find a restaurant? Oh, I always have the people that come in and try to do what you're doing for in Istanbul for dolmuşes. Okay, where's my dolmuş and stuff like that, because they're problems you're having, but usually those are not big enough.
Yeah. And I think here the Göktaş is asking something similar here. Like how did you know, or when did you know that you were ready to start your own company? So here, Adil Hocam, I agree that, you know, statistically, you know, it happens in the late 30s, the big breakthroughs. I made the jump at 29 and I failed. And so statistically, I fall into that. But there's this, what's it called? Misconception or wrong assumption that you would ever be ready, Gökçe, right? I mean, you would never, you know, I never thought I'm ready. I don't think today I'm ready, right? There's a ton of things I don't know about, you know, running a company of 75 people and, you know, of our size, etc. So it does get quite intense, but you need to be kind of like comfortable with the fact that, you know, you're never ready, right? You get better over time. You get better the more you experience different things. You get better the more you fail, by the way, but it does, you know, it does get tough psychologically for you to kind of like fail and get up and continue, fail and get up and continue. That is a trait that I think is the key of success, right? Failing and understanding why you failed and having the humility to kind of judge yourself on why you failed, but not be too harsh on yourself, right? I mean, you know, judge yourself in a constructive way. I mean, you shouldn't call yourself an idiot, right? So, but, you know, kind of like taking the lessons and not repeating the mistakes and trying something better next time. So you're never ready. I mean, Gökçe, if you have a big idea, and, you know, don't get emotionally connected to your idea, right? I mean, this is, I'll touch base on that in a bit, but, you know, that's, you know, readiness, there isn't a formula for it. If there's a big idea and, you know, you can put together a team that can tackle it, an effective team that can tackle it, not your best friend or, you know, your friends that you hang out with, right? No, an effective team. Let's say you're the hustler, you're the business developer, you need a hacker and you need a hipster. That's the, you know, how I mean, you need the coder and you need the you know, the designer to get it right in tech. But if it's an idea for a restaurant, by the way, entrepreneurship doesn't have to be only tech, right? It could be a restaurant, could be a cafe, could be, you know, a brand, could be anything. For example, if it's a restaurant, then you need to have the chef or, you know, the restaurant operator or someone that knows the business, etc. So if you can put together an effective team and if you're tackling a good problem, yes, you can win in your 20s and you can win big, right? But it's okay if you fail, right? That's the beauty about it. Like, you shouldn't and you wouldn't be judged if you fail. If anything, we usually, while hiring, if we see people applying who have been founders and co-founders before and they failed, they usually prioritize as much as an MBA candidate is prioritized, because you learn a lot there.
There was a question also about when you failed initially with Volt. They asked, you know, how much debt did you have and stuff, because you were lucky in that I guess you didn't have taxes and other things that you owed to the government. You simply had investors which didn't get their money back, because failure can be horrible if you hadn't had any investments and you went out and borrowed and have debts to other companies.
Yeah, so don't borrow for sure. I mean, or if you want to borrow what you can close, but don't get into debt, definitely not with the government. So you know, when Volt failed, it didn't have any debt with the government. In fact, we closed all of our debts, we closed everything, and we still had, you know, a bit of money left. We had $100,000 left, right? So out of the 1.2 million. And that was kind of also part of the deal of how to use that money to set up Volt lines and how to compensate the old investors in a fair way. So that is, you know, in a sense, a key thing, right? on the debt side, don't have debt, don't overexpose yourself, right? Now, from the investor side, about investors not getting their money, again, I've had very stressful nights. It was really tough, digesting that. But one thing about investors, and MEVP told it to me in a very cool way. I mean, they were pretty cool. I mean, MEVP is a very professional fund. They're a very professional venture capital firm. They're one of the biggest in MENA. And I wish they told it to me earlier, but anyways, because I was like really stressed for a long time. But I mean, their approach was like, they were like, Ali, we're in the venture capital business, right? We write off investments sometimes, and some of our bets fail, and some of our bets make 10x, and on average, a fund makes 2-3x returns, right? So they, in Turkish it's called risk sermaye, right? It's a risky asset class. It's one of the riskiest asset classes. So they're like, don't worry, we like you as a founder, we like you as an entrepreneur, you're very data driven, you're very transparent, you tried everything that you could, now try something else. We cannot support you, we also have LPs to report to, so we cannot support you forever. But if you build something that's meaningful and have a good traction, we will support you again, right? And I mean, what else do you want? This was a great way to understand how venture capital works. So that's why there's a business model called venture capital. It's very important to understand it and understand that you cannot just go to them and ask them for money. They will ask for a million things before they give you their money. And when they give you their money, they need to have the conviction that you can succeed, right?
Sure.
And not only succeed is for them 10x return, right? But obviously, they also live with the acceptance of the fact that they could lose that money.
By the way, terminology, in this VC, venture capital, these companies usually don't invest their own money. They form funds. They have a general partner, which makes the decisions. Then you have limited partners, which are the investors. They put the money in. And then usually it's 7 years about that the fund exists. They invest in the first few, relatively small, and then they follow on to the successful ones. And they know that some are going to die. About a 30% die, don't return anything. About 30% will bring back about the money. About 30% will bring 1 to 2x. And the remaining 10%. That's what they're playing for. The remaining 10% is what can save the company by bringing back 10, 20, 50x, which basically forms the investment. And to do this, you can't simply find the best 10. Nobody's been able to do just the best 10. So you need a portfolio.
Exactly. Matt is asking, is it possible to keep the corporate job as a backup? And utilize the time, the remaining time for entrepreneurship? I love this question because I have a story for it.
Part-time entrepreneurship.
Part-time entrepreneurship doesn't work, right? At least, at least in my example, in my story. Some other people will say, yeah, you should try definitely a side hustle until it builds up, etc. And sure, I mean, it could work in other cases. For me, it didn't work. And here's the reason why. When I quit from P&G, I submitted my resignation in August 2013, right? Now, let me tell you when I had the idea. I had the idea in March. And I worked on it on my Excel for 3 months, but didn't tell anyone about it because I thought it's the most brilliant idea ever. It wasn't, and probably 100 people had the same idea at the same time.
They'd steal it.
Yeah, people will steal my idea. No, dude, your idea is not that, great. I'm talking to myself back when I was, 29. So, and then, we were in an entrepreneurship event because I started getting interested in entrepreneurship. And there was this guy, he's Lebanese. He was giving a talk here in Istanbul. And he's quite famous because he made a very successful website that he sold to Yahoo. So I went to see him, and he had a slide saying F your idea, right? And because he's like, you know, your idea is nothing, basically. And he had this explanation saying how, you know, if you have an idea right now in a city like Istanbul of 20 million, probably 1,000 people have the same idea. Statistically speaking, it's very possible that 1,000 people have the same idea, right? And he's like, there's a difference between people that have an idea and people that actually work on that idea. So let's say another 10%, you know, there's now 100 people, you know, working on that idea. And then there's a difference between people that are working on ideas and people that are that actually quit everything and work and focus on making that idea a reality. Now we're down to 10 people, right? And then again, there is statistically, you know, a percentage of people that, you know, they work full-time on an idea, but the assumption that everyone working on an idea will be able to ship it as a product and launch it is also a flawed assumption. So you end up having 2 or 3 people launching an idea, right? But the funnel is massive. And if you're up there in the I have an idea, there's another 999 people that have the same idea. So when I saw that, I was like, holy shit, okay, wow. So I need to tell people about it, right? Because no one cares. So I went and I told my immediate like best friend, right? I was like, Gokalp, listen, there was Gokalp and Esra, okay? My friends in PNG. Like, guys, I have the most brilliant idea. Come listen. You're the only people that know about it, etc. And I told them the idea. They're like, you know, Sertac on the 9th floor, he did the same thing. He just launched. I was like, Sertac Kimia? They're like, he's on the 9th floor, he's in IT. I was like, fuck, okay. So I saw it and I cried, you know, because, you know, for 3 months, I'm hiding my most brilliant idea, and then Sertac in IT on the 9th floor already launched it. So I started working on it, right? And when I quit, I decided to quit and pursue it in August. When I quit,
what did Sertac do?
Sertac ended up failing like all of us because we all failed. We're out of time, right? So we'll wrap up.
Well, I have a few more minutes. If there's somebody that says or if you have something, oh, I must tell the students this.
Yes.
We have a few more minutes.
That story, because, you know, can entrepreneurship be part-time? So I quit because I wanted to focus on it full-time. PNG offered me a very secretive policy, not very secret, but I mean a very rare policy called LTFT, less than full-time. So they offered me part-time to work for 6 months part-time because they wanted me really to stay, right? And then, you know, I was inspired by the story of a Mexican, of a Spanish king when he invaded Mexico in the 1400s. You know, he asked when his army, they went with 5 ships, and when they were on the shore, he asked his army to burn the ships. And they said, you know, how can we go back to Spain? I mean, we love you, we are here to fight, but we want to come back eventually after winning the war. He's like, if you think you're going to win the war, then we'll go back with their ships, right? So if you have a ship waiting for you, you will not fight as hard, right? Because you will fail. I mean, it's such a difficult thing. You will get rejected so many times. So if you have a ship, you will fail. And the funny part is, for 7 months I got rejected. PNG gave me a 6-month window. For 7 months I got rejected until the first investor invested on the 7th month. So if I had the PNG option, I would have went back to PNG. But because I didn't have the PNG option, I kept going. So that's why I believe, like, wait until you verify it. I mean, you can do in part-time the research, the, you know, the idea validation. Don't get too emotionally attached to the idea. Try to get the beating, as much beating as possible. Don't be defensive. If it fails, then let it fail there. But if you build more conviction with data and numbers and, you know, validations from the market, then you should do it full-time.
The burning the ships example is also for when the Muslims invaded Spain, that they also burned their ships to make sure that there was no retreat, that they had to go forward.
Ulema, I didn't know that. So I'll start saying the Muslim version of it in Turkey and the Spanish version in Europe.
All right. Any other last questions that you have to ask? Ali, that was great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We enjoyed it. And well, who knows? We will try and do this again sometime.